Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast with your hosts Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker, where you'll hear authentic, entertaining stories, tips, lessons, and wisdom from champions to inspire, motivate, and educate you. You'll get the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Pallas.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo Podcast, where I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Hey, Maria, I am so excited that today we are going to talk about how failure can be your friend. And we have a special guest, Hannah Moore, a member of our U.S. Open Water Swimming National Team, who's going to be joining the podcast. Hannah is going to be interviewed during a new segment we're launching called Road Trip. So I'm excited about that. And so hello, Maria, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Kelly. It's great to hear your voice. Just getting back from a big trip, so I'm trying to get my feet under me. So I've had some failures already this morning, so I'm excited about this podcast.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I know we can all use that because failures, it would be nice to think of them as your friend.
Yeah, yes.
So what can you tell us about a time that failure was your friend in your storied athletic career?
Okay, well, I think failure is, as you said, your friend, especially from a distance. I think failure at the time can seem just terrible. For people who have had success in athletics, I think failure after success can be really frustrating. And my little story is, I do a 12-hour event in Sebring, Florida every year. And the very first year, sort of on the beginning of my trajectory as a upward trajectory as an endurance cyclist, I did the 12-hour event, and I just came out of nowhere. Nobody knew who I was, and I just killed it. I set a new record. I was, everybody's like, who is this woman? So then the next year I went back, there was, thinking that was easy. And I wasn't as prepared as I should have been, mostly from a mechanical standpoint. I didn't go over the bike carefully. I didn't make sure that the bike was in good shape. And I had all kinds of mechanical issues on the next year. And because I'd done that well, there was sort of a group who had their plan was, and I didn't know this, was to crush my record and to crush my time from the previous year. There was another woman who was in my age group, and she had just a whole team, and they'd been kind of, targeting me essentially. So she's a great competitor, and she just crushed me. And I remember standing on the side of the road as, she went by, maybe she lapped me a couple of times thinking, oh, this is so embarrassing. So the lesson from that, was you can never take for granted anything. You have to approach every event that you do with appropriate preparation, both physical and mental, and also all your gear and equipment. So that's my athletic failure story. I have lots of personal failures. I set goals for myself, and so sometimes one of the goals I've had recently is to have improved interaction with my spouse. And I've had repeated failures on that too. And I think the lesson for that is just to keep trying, sort of the persistence. So I know you have failure stories too, Kelly. So let's hear them. I've messed up.
I want to touch back on that, your bike story, because that is just, it's so powerful and so true that the smallest little details of your overall plan. So I know, little background on Bike Sebring, right? It's a 12-hour race. And this race, when you say this group plan to crush your record, drafting is legal in that race, right?
That's right.
So you can get behind somebody who's really fast and kind of, draft them and set the record. And I remember
she had a great team.
Yeah. I remember that race actually that you guys did, and she was following some really fast guys. And so, and that's all legal, and hats off to her being smart. But it is those little details. It is the details of making sure your bike mechanics are good, or that you're drafting with the right group, or whatever it is that it takes to set those records or reach your overall goals. So that relates exactly back to my little story of an athletic event that I did in the USA Triathlon Organization, the ITU, actually, it's the International Triathlon Union, holds a world championship race in not just triathlon, but they actually do it in duathlon, which is biking and running. They do it in aquathon, which is running and swimming. And then they do it in, of course, what do they call it now? Aqua bike, which is biking and swimming. So back then, before I really got into cycling more recently, I've been into cycling, but I was a runner and a swimmer. And so I was very excited about going to the aquathon World Championships, and they were being held in Cancun, Mexico. And I had done a lot of open water swimming and, of course, a lot of running. You and I, ran many races together and had a lot of fun at that. So the race was in October, and there was a hurricane in the ocean where we were swimming, or it had gone by, or it was coming in. It wasn't actually during a hurricane, but it was either pre-hurricane or post-hurricane. I don't remember, but I do remember that the swells in the ocean were about 6 to 8 feet drops. So you would be swimming, and then you would literally, it was like a carnival ride. You would just drop down. You get lifted up, and it kind of like, boom, and so you were going around. And they had these huge buoys, the markers, and it was, I think it was a 5K swim. Might have been a 3K swim. I can't actually remember, but the buoys were about 800 meters apart. So you swam out about 400 meters, and then you went around one buoy, and then you swam 800 meters to the other buoy, and you went around, and I think it was 3 laps or so. And so these buoys are gigantic. They're like the size of a big SUV. They're floating in the water. They're bright fluorescent orange. And I was just kind of head down, trying not to choke on salt water and swimming. And, I get back to my final, I'm a swimmer first. And so I know that I'm leading my wave because I just took off and nobody was even near me. And as I'm just hitting the shore, so the water, I'm done with my swim and the water, and I have a run. So it's like a it's a 2.5K run followed by a 3K swim followed by a 2.5K run. So I'm getting ready to think about putting on my tennis shoes and doing my run, and I get a tap on my shoulder from a guy in a kayak with a paddle, and he says, "You missed the buoy." I said, "What? Excuse me?" He said, "You missed the last buoy." I said, "No, I didn't. I went around the buoy." He said, "Well, if you want to be disqualified, that's fine, or you can go back and get the buoy." So, of course, I just dove back in. I swam out 400 meters. I went around the buoy. I swam back in. So, by that time, the wave had pretty much caught up to me, and I didn't end up finishing. I think I ended up finishing in silver, but I would have had gold by a long shot. But I did get the silver medal. And it was such a simple failure. It was so, I really don't know how I missed it. If I was in the top of a swell and it was in the bottom of a swell, or I was in the bottom of a swell and I couldn't see it. But I could have sworn that I went around that buoy, and it's those little errors that
what would you do if you had to do it over again? What would you do differently? It sounds like it was difficult to see the buoy.
I would have just targeted better. That's practicing targeting. In open water swimming, you lift your head up, you breathe and sight at the same time. There's really no excuse. If I was coaching somebody at open water swimming and they missed a buoy that was the size of an SUV, I would say, it's your fault, and it was my fault. I just your neck.
Was there fear? Was there fear because of the swells?
I think it was laziness. No, at that point I had no fear. I was just having fun. I was kind of like riding the wave. But I think, after it was the last buoy and the last circle loop of the course, and your neck gets really tired because you're sighting, you're up, you're down, and there was a lot of sighting going on. And I just wanted to put my head down maybe for 10 strokes instead of 5, or, I usually sight every 5 strokes. I stroke head down 4 strokes, pop up and sight a buoy, and then head down 4 strokes. And some people, some people sight every stroke. Some people sight every other stroke. But the more head up sighting you do, A, you're more on course, but B, you're going slower. Your neck's more tired. Your shoulders are more tired. So I would just sight, I would just do a better job sighting. I was being lazy. I just, give my head a break and put my face down for all these strokes. And I missed it. So, if that had been.
Were you confident? Yeah. I mean, was it like, oh, well, I've got this? And
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I got this. I had a good run. I went into the water with the lead pack. I dropped the lead pack. I was way ahead. So it was a combination of maybe overconfidence, of just not paying the attention to the details. And so I think that just applies to anything in life. Like, what are your thoughts on these little trip ups that make?
I think you're exactly right. Planning, what is it? Perfect planning. I can't remember the expression, but in anything you do, preparation can also be a source of hiding, we call it, from doing something. But for me, I'm kind of a throw myself into it and do it kind of person. So I have to slow down and prepare. And the more preparation and thought, like if you had visualized yourself perhaps hitting every buoy, then that would have been something that you, as you did your swim, okay, I've got to make sure I'm getting every buoy. So, and that's part of preparation. For me, preparation, we're getting ready to go through a move right now. Everything's going to be better if I prepare properly. And certainly in that race in Florida, taking the bike to the daggone bike mechanic and having him look over it would have been an easy thing to do. And like you, I was lazy and overconfident and didn't do my preparation. I didn't, I wasn't. So those, yeah, I think that it all kind of goes back to preparation and thinking through. In your case, if you, I think maybe done more of the visualization of hitting every buoy and making sure. Had you ever missed a buoy before?
No, I'd never missed a buoy before.
Okay, well,
and I and I haven't since. And that I think is the key for both of us. Is that and I know what you were trying to get to, because it's kind of a Parkerism. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance, right?
That's it.
So
hey, how come my husband didn't get that?
I think he did get it. Yeah. And I was giggling when you said you were having communication issues with your spouse, which is my brother. And he needs the podcast for busy physicians, right? I think that's the podcast he needs. Yeah. Well, so what I was going to say, that, it is those little failures that you have that make you prepare better the next time. So if we didn't have those, then we wouldn't do things differently the next time. So that's why, the whole message here today with the podcast, and we are going to hear some quotes on failure from a 22-year-old, Olympic hopeful Hannah Moore, that just blow me away. Like when we were transcribing her interview, which is on a location road trip, she says some stuff about failure that I want to really pull out and post, because she's very articulate and very concise and thoughtful in how a pretty bad failure she had her junior year of college changed her trajectory of her swimming career, her senior year, and then now. So that is, that's really the message here, that when you have those little, they may seem so little, but it's that one little, perfect bike analogy is the little fork in the spokes that throws you. That's just something small that can really make a difference in the future.
And I think I would just add to that you remember your failures. At least I do. I think especially public humiliations where you're expected to win something or whatever. Failures stick with you, and they teach you stuff, and I think you can focus too much on failure, but for me, the beauty of failure is that, you remember them, and you're not going to make that mistake. You're not going to miss the buoy. And I'm going to go to every bike ride with a bike that is perfectly tuned. So you do remember things when you fail. Whereas my successes, I don't know what I did right.
Yeah, that's so true. And, Maria, that reminds me of a touch point that I used to tell my swimmers when I was coaching, that you have a certain number of swims. And first, you got to relate this to an easy baseball analogy, and it's overused, but it is so true. So a designated hitter or a batter in baseball that bats in the 300s. So, they're batting 333 or they're batting 300. Those guys are the bomb. They're like making the big bucks. They are just killing it with being a great hitter. But does anyone really realize that number means that they strike out 7 times out of 10? I mean, that's kind of when you look back on anyone's swimming career, and mine just because I know it well, it was just a handful of races that made me an All-American, an Olympic trials qualifier, a national champion, just a handful of races. I mean, I swam hundreds of races that were either subpar, not a best time, or a bad time, or a terrible time, or, a mediocre, pretty good. But it was, for 90% of the races that I swam, I wasn't happy with. The 10% that were successes are what, really makes my swimming resume look good. And I know that that's the way it is with anyone. I mean, it's just, it's like that with batting. It's like that with life. You're going to hit, if you hit 3 times out of 10 really great, then you can be a success, but you've got to learn from the 7 times that you don't hit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think one of the things that you have to do with failures, you have to do the postmortem. Okay, what did I do wrong here? And what can I change? And otherwise the failure is wasted, because a failure is a gift. It's a gift to your future, right? So if you just fail and you hide in your humiliation or your embarrassment or you quit, then that failure is not giving you anything. But if you look at it and you say, okay, here's what I did wrong, here's what I'm going to do differently next time, then a failure is a huge gift.
I love it. That's exactly right. Well, now, we don't want to ramble on too long here because we've got a nice interview with Hannah Moore, and I think you are going to kind of introduce our road trip here.
Kelly recently drove to Miami, Florida to meet up with and interview Hannah Moore, where Hannah flew in from Raleigh, North Carolina to train for the Miami 10K open water course. She's getting ready for a big upcoming race that will be held there, and is one of 2 steps for swimmers to land a spot on the U.S. Olympic team in open water swimming. The interview with Hannah is really wonderful, and it's coming up next.
And now it's time for the road trip segment.
We are so honored today to be spending time with Hannah Moore. Hannah is a member of our U.S. open water national team and is a serious contender for representing the U.S. in the 2020 Olympics in the 10K open water. She's from Cary, North Carolina, and comes from a real swimming family. Both of her parents swam in college, her mom at Michigan and her dad at LaSalle. And her siblings are accomplished swimmers as well. Hannah is coming off an outstanding NCAA career at North Carolina State University, where she is a multiple-time All-American, earning a 3rd-place finish in the mile behind the likes of Katie Ledecky. Her time in the 1650 is 15:40. And Hannah was an ACC champion in her college career, and she qualified for our U.S. Pan-Pacific's national team last year. In 2017, she just missed making our world team by 1 spot with her 16:08 1,500-meter freestyle. Not surprisingly, in just her first year of open water swimming, she is making big waves. So Hannah, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It is an honor.
So want to start out with just comparing for some of our listeners. We have a lot of people who swim in the pool and we have a lot of people who swim open water. And just can you give us your thoughts on pool swimming versus open water swimming?
So transitioning from pool swimming to open water swimming was kind of seamless for me because I really loved doing over distance training. And I think that it works well for people who love the mile, because if you just love to keep swimming, love to keep going, open water swimming is for you. What I also loved about open water swimming was that it's not time-based or time-oriented or focused. It's more like race-focused, strategy-focused. It's almost like a game. So it's less about comparing yourself to yourself and what you've done in the past. And it's more about doing things in the present and how you can beat people in your race each time. And it's always a new scenario. And it's never, oh, I won a best time. Oh, I didn't go a best time. It's more like you're so focused on each individual race. And so it's always like a new challenge, which I love about it. So
awesome. Thank you. So I know one thing that a lot of people feel like with open water, that there's a lot of bumping around and a lot of hitting of bodies, and that, you know, what are give us some stories about getting out there in the pack and bumping around in the waves and the bodies, and tell us some open water stories.
Well, the race I just did in Qatar was actually insane because it was a World Cup circuit, which is normally pretty competitive because Europe is really big in open water. And I feel like the U.S. is a little bit behind in the open water emergence of the sport. And Europe is super elite field. And they had the Germans, the Chinese were there. The Australians were using it as their selection meet. The Italians, they were pretty harsh there too. But it was the most aggressive race I've ever been in. I have never been hit so hard as I was going into the feeding station in the race in Doha. When I finished the race, I actually had bruises covering the backs of both of my hands. They were blue. And I had cuts where my goggles had been on my face from getting smacked so hard by one of the Australian girls. Swims straight arm horizontally. And I'm not sure if it's intentional. You know, it probably is. But a lot of these teams were using it as their selection competition for their world championship meets. So these girls were intentionally spotting each other and kind of fighting, which brought all of us into the fight. So it was an extremely aggressive race. And it was also kind of crazy because coming into like the feed station, it was such a short feed station, and that makes a huge difference because there's such a limited space. And so all these coaches are crammed into such like a short distance that you have to find your feeder in a split second. And if you hesitate for just an extra second too long, you get like body slammed essentially. So it's kind of vicious, but it also is kind of fun because you're getting like pushed and pulled around, and you kind of have to find a way to stay like mentally calm and like just be like, okay, breathe, it's okay, like this is a game, this is how it is, like I chose this sport, like there's nothing like wrong, but you just kind of have to like play your own game. So it's a mental challenge too.
Wow, so that's really sounds a little bit like roller derby in some ways. So that's a great thing. What is going through your mind? So I know you told me that in Japan, which was the circuit before Qatar, that it was really high surf slapping you in the face, and then you've described people hitting you literally in the face. What are you saying to yourself when you're in the middle of a 10K swim, you're tired, you're getting hit? What are you saying to yourself in those moments?
Well, I got to be honest, I kind of told Kelly a little bit. Sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this when I'm in the middle of the race? But you kind of go through like ebbs and flows in the middle of a 10K where like at one point you'll get hit and you're like, God, why am I doing this to myself? But then right immediately after, you keep swimming and you're like, oh, I remember why I'm doing this. This is freaking awesome. Like you're out in an open body of water, like swimming, giving your all, surrounded by people, trying to beat them. Like the feeling of that is just like unbeatable, I think. But you got to have a lot of positive self-talk during the 10K and kind of tell yourself that you're prepared, you're ready. You've done so much training. You had rest day yesterday. Pre-10K day is always rest day. It's lie in bed day and watch movies. So you know you're well rested, and you just kind of get in there and you focus. But you have to stay positive with yourself during the whole time because you are in your head the whole time. It's just you and your thoughts for 2 hours. So it can be good or bad. So you have to make it good, you know.
That's awesome. So compare for us a really intense 1,500 meter swim where, you're in our top 3 in the country, and in the 1500 in the pool or the 1650 in the pool, and then comparing that level of whatever pain or mental anguish or what you're going through, compare kind of and contrast those two, the longest distance in the pool and the 10K?
Well, luckily, I've only been doing the 10K for about a year, so I have yet to have one where I die, and I hope that I don't have that experience. But I have had some miles in the pool where I have died, and I think a lot of that comes with the intensity level of the pool mile, and it's, like I was telling Kelly, it's much higher. You swim at threshold plus pace to like blue pace, which are the heart rate zones. So you're swimming at this high threshold for a much shorter period of time, but you're pushing your body harder. Which I also compare to the 500 free because it's so intense, and I think that race is also very difficult. But the 10K is more, you slowly build into it throughout the 2-hour race, so you're not pushing your body at that super intense threshold the whole time. So for me, I like that, and that's more manageable because I tend to get better as the distance increases. And I also know some people like that too because they don't have as much speed on the front or back end, so they prefer the 10K since you can swim at that lower level for longer. But if I were to be asked which one I liked better, I think it would depend. Last year I definitely liked open water better because I was excelling in it, having fun at this new sport, and every race is different. But I've always had a very special place in my heart for the mile because it was like kind of my first introduction to distance swimming in the pool, and it's also a strategy in itself because I also tend to like to build into that as well. But I love them both, so it's hard to pick which one I like better. But right now, focused more on the 10K, so I'd say the 10K is my favorite right now.
That's great. That's beautiful. So I'm sure we have some people who have a goal of doing their first triathlon or their first open water swim, which is very intimidating to a lot of people. And you are obviously at the pinnacle of our open water swimmers in the United States. So what advice would you give to somebody who's just wading in for the first time to go into an open water, either a triathlon or their first open water swim?
I would definitely say that you should be confident in yourself, and it's never as far as you think it's going to feel. For me, if you think about how long 10,000 is, it's kind of crazy how, like, 10K, that's so far. But when you're actually swimming it, I feel like time almost flies because I'm like, there's no way that was 2 hours. And so it definitely goes by a lot faster than you think if you've prepared for it and if you've done the proper training. I would also say don't be afraid to get out into the front pack early because that's typically where you want to be to have the best possible outcome for the race. I mean, you can always come from behind in an open water swim, but it's much easier if you can spot the leaders, get some draft, try out different things with that. I wouldn't recommend leading your very first open water race. That one might be a little painful. Maybe try and get some draft and see how it feels, but definitely try to stay towards the front. And at the beginning, try and get out fairly quickly. And if there's a good amount of people in the race, I would definitely kind of use your front end speed to beat some people off the start.
Very good. So one of the things that I know I personally watched you swim the NCAA 1650 right next to Katie Ledecky. You were in lane 3. She was in lane 4. And I know you've stood on the starting line with the country's best swimmers and you being one of them. So what is going through your mind if we have people that have, pre-race anxiety? What are you saying to yourself behind the blocks when you're standing up to make our Olympic team, swim against the best people in the world? What is going through Hannah Moore's mind?
Yeah, I talked with Kelly a good bit about this, and I kind of told her that you just have to be really confident in the training you've done because, you've done so much more than this race. And I was telling her, we do so many yards, especially as distance swimmers training. And for instance, in a practice, you could be doing 4 1500s descending them. And then it comes time to do the swim meet, and you're only asked to do one good one. And so, you got to be confident in the back of your mind, and you got to say to yourself, I only have to do one repeat, one perfect repeat, and that's all. And you have to trust in that over preparation that it's going to carry you through to the finish. And I think you swim the best when you're confident in yourself and you feel the best. So that's always what I try to remember.
Very good. Very good. And as far as like lessons that you've taken away from swimming that you apply to your life, because you're a very successful student and in general, you're a leader amongst your peers, and what things have you learned from swimming that you feel like you can apply to your life out of the pool?
I would say, if I had to describe myself, I would say I am determined, because I've been through, swimming can be a cruel sport. You can be up and down sometimes, and you can have plateaus, you can have highs, you can have lows, and nothing has broken my heart more than swimming has in the past, but also nothing has made me feel better than swimming has in the past. And you have to stay self-motivated, especially when you're done with college swimming, and you have to find that inner motivation of why you're doing it, and you're doing it because you love it. And I've always been very determined to come back from my lows, I think, and I think that's something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, is to not be afraid to fail. I think it's taught me a lot about failure and never giving up, even if you don't get the outcome you want the first time. And I think that can be applied to a lot of different areas of your life. And I think coming into college, I was very scared to fail in the pool. And that's kind of why I hadn't reached my potential yet. And now I think I'm very okay with failing, because I know that that's how you get to the best outcome in the end. And I think that's something that swimming can teach you that's really important.
That's awesome. So one of our topics with our podcast that we're going to dive deeper on is failure, is when people fail. And what would you say your thoughts are on when you failed and what that did to your overall approach to your goals?
Well, I think that my junior year of college, I was still in the phase where I was really scared to fail. I treated swim practice like every day was a performance and I had to go be perfect. And that led me to this constant state of anxiety, because I was so scared to disappoint my coach, disappoint myself. I always had to be getting better. And then I ended up throwing a lot of that mentality out the window my senior year of college, and kind of just focusing on what I could control and having more fun and being more relaxed. And ultimately that really helped me, because I learned that, yes, I had a pretty bad ACC conference meet my junior year of college. I don't think I even podiumed in my best event that year in the mile. I had a horrible time. And I just remember getting out of the pool totally embarrassed, because, I'm Hannah Moore. I'm a great distance swimmer. My whole team was on the deck. The parents were there. And I think I added 20 some seconds in my mile. No podium finish. Just totally embarrassed. Got out of the pool, walked straight to the back hallway, sat on the floor and cried. And I think my coach came back and found me later. And I think I just kind of took that moment and I thought about it for a while. But, there's a lot of things that go into failure. And it's not just, it doesn't happen because, you ate the wrong thing the day before. It happens because, somewhere in your mind, you weren't ready. And I think that you have to train yourself to use that in your training and understand that it's going to happen. Like, you're not always going to be perfect. And the next year, I was the ACC champion in the mile. So, came full circle. But, you know, I definitely didn't have a perfect career, but I found a way to use that failure to come back stronger the next year. So I think it did help me in the long run.
Wonderful. Great stuff. Really great stuff. So, what is your very favorite thing about swimming? Like, just the actual feeling of swimming, of hitting the water. What is your favorite thing?
Well, I think that I love that feeling. I don't know, that feeling you get after like a super, super hard workout, and like the kind of workout that you look at and you're just like, oh my God, I'm doing what today? Like, and you just look at it as a daunting sheet of paper or something, and it's just like, I don't know, like your main set's like 7K and you're just like, how am I even going to do this? But, you have your teammates around you, or if you're doing it by yourself, even better. Props to you. But like that feeling when you finish and you're just like on this like adrenaline high, and you're like, your body should be so tired, but like sometimes I can't even fall asleep the day after, or like the day I've had a really, really hard like afternoon workout, and you should be like dead tired and you should be like passed out asleep. Those are usually the nights where I can't fall asleep because I'm so amped, where I'm like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. Like that feeling, like that tingly feeling after you finish like a super hard workout, you like gave everything you could out of your body. That's like the feeling I live for. So I just like, and you can't get that. I mean, I'm sure you can get it in other sports too, but like, I don't know if I'll have that like forever. And I just love that feeling. So.
Yeah, I can relate to that full body feeling. Swimming, like no other sport, really is from your scalp to your toes. You're feeling it. So, and when you describe that emotion, like what are 3 positive emotions that you feel like you connect to when you're in swimming?
Positive emotions. Well, I feel support from the coaching staff. The coaches at NC State this year have just done a great job making everyone feel really supported, and they communicate really well. So support and communication are really important. There's also, you don't get this as much without the college team, but I'm lucky because I do train with a college team, but there's the feeling of love like around you, and like kind of you're in it together. You're all commiserating a little bit because it's difficult, but you feel like surrounded by people who do care a lot about you, and that really helps. Doing practices alone are definitely not as fun as doing them with a group of people, and I found that like that sense of love and connection is really important. And I think just like enjoying the process is also fun. Like, as hard as it is, like, you have to have fun. So I don't know, you kind of have to enjoy what you're doing if you want to be successful at it.
Yeah, enjoyment is definitely a positive emotion. So you are aiming for the 2020 Olympic team. And what is that going to mean to you when you get that Olympic ring and the Olympic? Are you getting the Olympic tattoos? Have you decided?
If I make the team, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That would be the only tattoo I would ever get.
Okay. So what is that going to mean to you? What is that going to feel like?
I told my friend I'd buy him a TV when I make the Olympic team, so of his choice. No, I'm honestly like, it's kind of crazy because like if you think of the magnitude of like what that means, like what you're trying to do, it's almost kind of scary, but it's also kind of like I feel this sense of peace because I'm like, well, I'm that close because I'm that good, and if I'm that good, there's not really a reason why like it's unrealistic or I don't deserve it, because I'm that close and I'm that good. And it is, I mean, it's always something young swimmers dream of, and to be this close for me is it is a little scary, but like I'm fully embracing it. And I think if I were to make the team in 2 months, I don't even know. I'll probably start crying immediately. It's a 2-step process though, so I can't start crying immediately. But I mean, this is something that I've worked really, really hard for the last year, and definitely changed my training, changed a lot of things about my mentality, and I think I have a good shot. So
Yeah, I definitely think you have a great shot. Well, thanks, Hannah. So if anything else, just knowing that we've got young swimmers, old swimmers like me listening, anything else you want to add to the little swimming community that might be listening?
I would just say that swimming is the best sport that exists, and you can try to argue with me or fight me on that one, and you're going to be wrong. But, and honestly, young swimmers just like swim for yourself and have fun and try and keep that feeling as long as you can, because that no pressure, just for fun feeling, kind of what you try to recapture the older you get, especially like I'm out of college, and I always try to think about the feeling of when I just started swimming and how it was so fun to go best times all the time, and just get to socialize with your friends, and you don't worry about it. It's not stressful. It's something that adds value to your life, and it's not a chore. It's an opportunity. And so if you kind of try and keep that emotion with you as long as you can, that will benefit you so much. And because it's a beautiful sport, and it brings you so many beautiful relationships, and you get to see a lot of places that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. And that's something that I'll be forever grateful for from swimming. And so
Hannah, no wonder you and I get along so well, because I feel the same way. It's why this podcast is based around swimming. And I know this is a funny little story that this is a couple of years ago, and I'm still a master swimmer, and I still love swimming as much as you love it right now. I still love it this much today, and I still have swum every day of my life that I could if I wasn't sick or injured or, in a business thing that I couldn't get out of. So I know I got to swim next to the NC State swim team, and I was doing my master's training. Yeah, it was the last year or the year before. And what did one of your friends say to you? That's going to be you, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's literally you, Hannah.
Yeah. So the nice thing about the sport of swimming is you can swim until you're I'm still inspired by the 90-year-olds that I see out there swimming. And so I think that's really great, that swimming is it's just such a great sport, and you can fall in love with it. And I used to wear my suit to bed when I was 8 years old. Did you ever do that?
I didn't do that. It was kind of weird, Kelly.
I know. Anyway, that's a wrap with Hannah Moore, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye. So, Maria, I wish you could have been there. It was awesome. What are your thoughts?
Hannah sounds like an amazing athlete. I have to say, when she was describing swimming in Europe with the very aggressive swimmers and being beaten up in the water and the feed station. I'm not an open water swimmer, so it's hard for me to imagine. She sounds amazing, and I wish her well. I really would love to see her in the Olympics.
Yeah, the poise and experience that this 22-year-old seems to have is it's going to be exciting to watch her career over the next several years. So we were just really fortunate we had her.
Now it is time for the quote of the week, this one from Henry Ford. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently.
We are so grateful that you spent time with us today, and we hope that you heard something that inspired, motivated, and educated you. As usual, for the copy of the show notes, for any links or important information referenced here, see below. Signing off for myself and my champion co-host, Maria Parker, we hope you'll join us again soon, and we know you can be a champion. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit championsmojo.com to learn more.